I, Amanda, 34 years old, never thought I'd catch my own sister stealing from me on camera. The security footage was crystal clear, Jessica and her husband Mike methodically going through my belongings like professional thieves. My heart sank as I watched them pocket family heirlooms, cash, and rifle through my personal documents while I was miles away on a business trip. They thought those cameras were just for burglars, but they're about to learn I see everything. Before I get into the whole story, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe to join others who know the importance of protecting what's yours. Trust me, what you're about to hear might save your relationships or at least your valuables. I've always been the responsible one. After working my way up in financial advising for over a decade, I finally landed a senior position at one of the top firms in Boston. My clients trust me to protect their assets, yet ironically, I couldn't protect my own from the people I trusted most. Growing up, Jessica and I were incredibly close despite the 3-year age gap. She was always the free spirit to my practical nature. I helped her with homework while she taught me to lighten up. Our parents constantly praised us for being the perfect sister duo. When Jessica met Mike at a friend's wedding 5 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to adore my sister. I even helped them plan their wedding, acting as Jessica's maid of honor and giving a teary speech about how Mike was the brother I never had. If only I had known then what I know now. Last year, after saving aggressively and building excellent credit, I purchased my dream home, a 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood with a beautifully landscaped backyard. The moment I got the keys, Jessica was the first person I called. She helped me paint every room and select furniture pieces that matched my style perfectly. I thought her excitement was purely supportive. Now I wonder if she was taking inventory even then. When my boss announced I needed to attend a 2-week training conference in Chicago to prepare for my promotion, I was both excited and anxious. I'd never left my new home for that long. The timing couldn't have been worse for Jessica and Mike, or so they claimed. They called me in a panic 3 days before my trip, saying their apartment had significant black mold and they needed to vacate immediately while remediation took place. "We've been coughing nonstop," Jessica explained, her voice sounding raspier than usual. "The landlord says it could take 2 weeks to fix everything properly." It seemed like perfect timing. I needed someone to watch my house, and they needed a place to stay. I offered without hesitation. "Just take care of my plants and bring in the mail," I told them as I handed over a spare key. "Make yourselves at home." The decision to install security cameras was made just 2 days before my departure. My coworker Daniel had his home broken into the previous month, and 3 houses in my neighborhood had been targeted in a string of burglaries. The system was surprisingly affordable and simple to install, 6 cameras strategically placed to cover the main areas: living room, kitchen, hallway leading to bedrooms, my home office, the backyard patio, and the front door. "I'm not being paranoid," I explained to Jessica when she arrived with 2 suitcases. "The Wilsons 3 doors down had their television and jewelry taken in broad daylight last week." "Smart thinking," Mike said, examining one of the cameras mounted in the living room corner. "Can you check these from your phone?" I demonstrated the app, showing how I could view live feeds and review recorded footage triggered by motion sensors. "I probably won't check much unless I get an alert, but it's nice to have peace of mind," I said. Jessica seemed momentarily uncomfortable but quickly smiled. "It'll be like you never left. We'll take good care of everything." I left them a detailed list of instructions: which plants needed water on which days, where spare light bulbs were kept, the schedule for trash and recycling pickup, and emergency contact information. I even stocked the refrigerator with their favorite foods and left a bottle of wine with a note saying thanks for house sitting. Enjoy. The first few days of my Chicago trip went smoothly. The conference was engaging, and I was learning valuable skills for my new role. Jessica sent daily text updates with photos of my thriving plants and reassurances that everything was fine. On day 3, I received a slightly odd message: "Hope you don't mind. I was feeling nostalgic and found your old photo albums in the hall closet. So many great memories of us as kids." I didn't remember storing any photo albums in that closet. Mine were in labeled bins in the basement storage area. Still, I brushed it off as a simple mistake. Later that evening, Mike called with what seemed like an innocent question. "Hey Amanda, in case of any home emergency, where do you keep important documents like the house warranty or insurance information?" Again, a small alarm bell rang in my head. I'd shown Jessica the fireproof document safe in my office before leaving and mentioned it contained all important home documents. Why would Mike be asking now? Then came a strange call from my neighbor, Mrs. Keller, an elderly woman who had brought me welcome cookies when I first moved in. "I just wanted to make sure everything is all right," she said hesitantly. "I've noticed quite a few different people coming and going from your house. Your sister mentioned you were renovating?" "I wasn't renovating anything." I thanked Mrs. Keller for her concern and assured her my sister was just house-sitting. After hanging up, I sat in my hotel room, staring at my phone. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly. Was I being paranoid? Jessica was my sister, after all. I decided to check the security footage, just to put my mind at ease. Little did I know, that simple decision would unravel my life and change my relationship with my sister forever. On the 5th day of my business trip, as I was sitting in a conference room listening to a presentation on client retention strategies, my phone buzzed with an alert from my home security system. "Motion detected in home office, 11:47 p.m. It was nearly midnight in Boston, and I couldn't imagine why Jessica or Mike would be in my office that late. Concerned but not yet alarmed, I discreetly opened the app. The footage showed my office door slowly opening, light from the hallway spilling into the darkened room. Mike entered first, followed by Jessica, who carefully closed the door behind them. They moved with a strange caution, like burglars rather than welcomed guests. I turned up the volume on my earbuds. "Start with the desk drawers," Jessica whispered. "I'll check the filing cabinet." My heart began to pound as I watched my sister and her husband methodically searching through my private office. Mike pulled open my desk drawer and began rifling through documents, occasionally holding papers up to read in the dim light from his phone flashlight. "Found anything useful?" Jessica asked, her voice barely audible as she flipped through my file folders. "Some bank statements," Mike replied. "Still looking for investment account information." I felt physically ill. Surely there was some innocent explanation? Maybe they were looking for a bill they needed to pay for me? But why the secrecy, the whispers, the late-night timing? I excused myself from the conference room and found a quiet corner in the hotel lobby. For the next hour, I obsessively reviewed footage from previous days, starting from when I'd left for my trip. What I found shattered any hope of an innocent explanation. Day 1 footage showed them acting normally, settling into guest room, ordering pizza. But by day 2, they were already exploring areas of my home they had no reason to enter. Mike spent 30 minutes in my bedroom closet where I kept my jewelry box and emergency cash fund. Jessica was photographing documents from my filing cabinet. They were methodical, replacing everything exactly as they found it. I would never have known if not for the cameras. Day 3 revealed Jessica carefully examining my collection of designer handbags, checking labels and taking photos. Mike was in my basement storage, opening bins labeled personal, tax records, and financial archives. By day 4, they had moved on to taking small items. A pair of gold earrings disappeared from my jewelry box. An envelope with $300 emergency cash I kept in my nightstand was noticeably thinner when Mike replaced it. Jessica found my password book hidden in a false bottom drawer and photographed every page. With shaking hands, I called Jessica, trying to keep my voice casual. "Hey Jess, how's everything going?" "Just checking in." "Everything's great," she chirped. "I watered your fiddle leaf fig this morning, it's looking so healthy. And Mike fixed that squeaky hinge on your bathroom door." "That's so helpful," I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. "How about my office? Everything okay in there?" There was the briefest pause. "Your office?" "Yeah, it's fine. We haven't really been in there except when I needed to get a pen yesterday." "Why do you ask?" The lie hit me like a physical blow. I watched the recorded footage from last night again as we spoke, seeing Jessica and Mike spending over an hour searching my office, touching everything. No reason, I managed to say. Just remembered I left some client documents out and was worried about confidentiality. Oh, we wouldn't snoop, Jessica laughed, the sound now sinister to my ears. Your work stuff is your business. We've been so busy anyway, took a day trip to that cute coastal town you recommended. Another lie. The footage showed them at my house all day. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. My own sister. My flesh and blood. The person who held my hair when I got sick in college, who helped me through my devastating breakup 3 years ago, who I'd supported financially when she was between jobs. How could she betray me like this? I dove deeper into the footage, now looking with new eyes. What I found next elevated my concern to genuine alarm. On day 2, Jessica had taken my spare house keys to a hardware store. The timestamp showed her gone for 45 minutes, enough time to make copies. Why would they need copies of my keys? Even more disturbing was footage from yesterday afternoon. While I was in conference sessions, 3 strangers were being led through my house by Mike. He showed them every room, opening closets and storage areas, discussing square footage and pointing out features like my new water heater and updated electrical panel. It looked disturbingly like a house tour. In the kitchen, I could clearly hear one visitor ask, "And the owner has no idea?" Mike's response chilled me, "Absolutely not. We have at least another week, probably more. Plenty of time." Jessica joined them, adding, "We're thinking 60,000 is fair, considering everything included." What were they planning to sell? My house? My possessions? My identity? Whatever it was, they were doing it behind my back, in my own home, while pretending to do me a favor. I collapsed onto the hotel bed and did something I hadn't done in years. I sobbed uncontrollably. This betrayal cut deeper than any relationship breakup or professional setback I'd ever experienced. The systematic nature of their actions showed this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment but a calculated plan to exploit my trust. Through my tears, the shock began to transform into something else, determination. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to gather every piece of evidence and make sure they faced consequences for their actions. No more being the understanding big sister who forgave everything. This time, Jessica and Mike had gone too far. I barely slept that night. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw the footage of Jessica and Mike rifling through my belongings playing on repeat in my mind. By morning, I felt hollow but determined. I skipped the first conference session and instead set up my laptop to continue reviewing security footage, looking for anything I might have missed. What I found made my blood run cold. The night before I had discovered their initial betrayal, Mike had walked through each room of my house with a measuring tape, carefully documenting dimensions in a small notebook. He photographed every valuable item: my grandmother's antique silver tea set, the original painting I had splurged on for my living room, even my home electronics and appliances. Jessica followed behind him with a notepad, writing detailed descriptions and occasionally looking up comparable prices on her phone. "The tea set alone is worth at least $3,000, Mike whispered, loud enough for the camera to pick up. "And her jewelry collection has to be worth 5 to 7, easy." "What about her investment accounts?" Jessica asked. "Did you find the statements?" "Better. I found her financial advisor login. Once we figure out her password pattern, we can access everything." I felt physically sick. This wasn't just opportunistic theft, this was a calculated operation targeting everything I owned. But the worst revelation came from footage captured in my kitchen the previous evening. Jessica and Mike sat at my dining table, papers spread before them, speaking in low but clear voices. "We need at least 40,000 to cover your gambling debts," Jessica said, her voice tense. "The collection agencies are threatening legal action now." Mike rubbed his face tiredly. I know. Between what we've already taken and what we can still get, we should be covered. But we need to think bigger." "What do you mean?" "Amanda's doing really well. This promotion is going to bump her to the next tax bracket. Why not position ourselves to benefit long term?" Jessica leaned forward. How? We tell her our apartment isn't habitable even after remediation. Play up toxic mold, health risks, whatever. She'll offer to let us stay longer. She always does the responsible big sister thing. Once we're established here, we can slowly access more of her assets. My sister nodded thoughtfully. She mentioned setting up a family trust eventually. If we're living here, she'll definitely include us. Exactly. And I've been looking at her signature on these documents. Pretty easy to replicate if needed. Forgery. They were discussing forging my signature. This had escalated beyond theft to potential fraud. With shaking hands, I called Rachel, my closest friend since college and the only person I trusted completely right now. They're stealing from you? Rachel gasped when I explained the situation. Jessica and Mike? Are you absolutely sure? I have it all on video, I said flatly. Hours of footage. They're going through everything, taking valuables, copying documents, making duplicate keys. Rachel was silent for a moment. I hate to say this, Amanda, but I've never completely trusted Mike. Remember when they visited last Christmas and your grandfather's watch went missing? Then mysteriously reappeared in the guest bathroom? I had forgotten about that incident. At the time, I'd assumed the watch had slipped off the nightstand, and Mike had found it and returned it. Now I wondered if he had been testing boundaries, seeing what he could get away with. What are you going to do? Rachel asked. First, I need to secure what I can remotely. Can you help me? Rachel lived only 20 minutes from my house. I asked her to call Jessica with an excuse to stop by. Returning a borrowed book would work, and then secretly check on certain hiding spots where I kept valuables, to confirm what had been taken versus what appeared in the footage. Next, I called my bank and credit card companies to set up fraud alerts and temporarily freeze new account openings in my name. I couldn't access my home safe remotely, but I could protect my financial identity. That evening, new footage showed Jessica had discovered one of the cameras in the living room. She studied it for a long moment, then called Mike over. Has this always been blinking like that? She asked, pointing to the small indicator light. Mike examined it closely. I think so. It's probably just showing it's working. Do you think she checks the footage? Mike scoffed. She said she installed them because of neighborhood break-ins. She's at a business conference all day. When would she have time to watch hours of footage of us watching TV and watering plants? Jessica didn't look convinced. Maybe we should be more careful anyway. We've only got a week left before she's back. Let's focus on the big stuff now. They moved away from the camera, but their conversation had confirmed my suspicions. They knew exactly what they were doing and were counting on my trust to shield them from suspicion. I called my parents that night, ostensibly to catch up, but really to fish for information about Jessica and Mike's financial situation. Have Jessica and Mike mentioned any money troubles to you? I asked casually. My father sighed. They borrowed $3,000 from us last month for car repairs. Said they'd pay us back when Mike's commission check came in, but we haven't heard anything since. And 2 months before that, they needed help with their rent, my mother added. Jessica said it was a one-time thing because Mike's company delayed paychecks. So they had been extracting money from my parents too. The pattern was becoming clear. After the call, I did something I'd never done before. I started investigating my sister and brother-in-law's background. A quick social media search revealed they'd moved apartments 3 times in 2 years. That seemed excessive, especially since Jessica had told me they loved their first place and planned to stay long-term. I texted an old mutual friend who had helped them move the first time. Hey, random question, did Jessica and Mike ever mention why they moved out of the Westbrook apartments so quickly? The response was illuminating. They didn't tell you? They got evicted for non-payment. Mike said his gambling was just a hobby, but Jessica was pretty upset about how much he'd lost. Evicted. Not mold remediation. Another lie. I sat back, stunned by the scope of deception. My sister and her husband weren't just opportunistic thieves, they were systematic con artists who had been hiding serious financial problems while exploiting family members' trust. And now they had unfettered access to my home, my possessions, and potentially my identity. The betrayal was complete. The question now was how to respond without tipping them off that I knew everything. I needed a plan not just to confront them, but to protect myself and get justice. As I watched new footage of them lounging on my couch, drinking my wine, and laughing as if they had no concerns in the world, my sadness crystallized into something harder and more determined. They had mistaken my generosity for weakness. That was about to change. When you discover the people you trust most are betraying you, your first instinct is emotional reaction, confrontation, accusations, demands. But my career in financial advising had taught me something valuable. When the stakes are high, strategic planning trumps emotional response every time. I needed to be smarter than Jessica and Mike, not just angrier. My first call was to Brian, a law school friend who now specialized in property law and identity theft cases. Amanda, based on what you're describing, you've got multiple legal issues here, Brian explained after I detailed the situation. Theft of physical property, potential identity theft, unauthorized duplication of keys, and if they're bringing strangers into your home without permission, that could constitute trespassing. What about the security footage? I asked. Is it legal for me to record them without telling them specifically about the cameras? In your state, security cameras in your own home are completely legal, even without disclosure. The law recognizes a reduced expectation of privacy for guests, especially in common areas like living rooms and kitchens. The footage is admissible as evidence if you decide to pursue charges. That was a relief. I had worried my evidence might be compromised. What would you do if you were me? I asked. Document everything meticulously, Brian advised. Create an inventory of everything you believe they've taken or tampered with. Establish a timeline of intrusions and activities. Secure any remaining valuables if possible. And most importantly, don't confront them until you're ready to take definitive action. Element of surprise is important here. Following Brian's advice, I created a spreadsheet documenting every item I had seen them take or photograph, with estimated values and descriptions. The list was longer than I'd expected. Grandmother's sapphire earrings, $2,800, family heirloom. Emergency cash, $300. Tiffany bracelet, $750. Designer handbag, $1,200. Apple Watch, $399. Collectible coins from father, $1,500, estimated. The total quickly exceeded $10,000, not including potential identity theft or fraud they might be planning with my financial documents. I arranged for Rachel to visit my house again, this time with a specific mission. Under the guise of borrowing a dress for an upcoming event, something Jessica knew about, Rachel would move my remaining valuable jewelry and important documents to a new hiding place Jessica and Mike wouldn't think to check inside a hollowed-out old textbook in my guest room bookshelf. "They're being so nice," Rachel texted after her visit. "It's creepy knowing what they're really doing." Jessica made me coffee and showed me pictures from their apartment renovations, which we know is a complete lie. Rachel confirmed several items were indeed missing from my hidden safe, matching what I'd seen on camera. She also reported something disturbing: "They've moved their stuff into your bedroom. They're sleeping in your bed, Amanda." That violation felt intensely personal. These weren't just houseguests overstepping, they were systematically taking over my life. Meanwhile, I changed all my passwords for bank accounts, investment portfolios, and email accounts. I placed credit freezes with all 3 major credit bureaus to prevent new accounts from being opened in my name. I contacted my investment firm to add extra verification steps for any withdrawal requests. Financially, I was battening down the hatches. The hardest part was maintaining a normal facade during my daily check-in calls with Jessica. Each conversation was an exercise in restraint as I listened to her elaborate lies about caring for my house while watching contradictory evidence on camera. "The plants are thriving," she'd say cheerfully, though footage showed she hadn't watered them in days. "We're keeping everything just as you left it," she promised, while I watched them rearranging furniture and using my personal items. During one call, I decided to test her with a direct question. "Hey Jess, have you seen my sapphire earrings anywhere? I can't remember if I packed them." There was a slight pause before she answered. "Sapphire earrings? I don't think I've seen them. Where do you usually keep them?" "In my jewelry box, top drawer. Grandmother gave them to me for my 30th birthday, remember?" "Oh, those. No, haven't noticed them. Want me to look?" "If you have time," I said casually. "No rush." 2 hours later, the security footage showed Jessica frantically searching through my bedroom, opening drawers she had already emptied days ago. She and Mike had a heated whispered conversation. "She specifically asked about the earrings," Jessica hissed. "Do you think she suspects something?" Mike shook his head. "It's just coincidence. If she suspected anything, she'd be demanding answers, not casually asking about earrings." Jessica looked unconvinced. "We should return some things before she gets back. We can always get them later when we move in permanently." Their plan to manipulate me into letting them stay long-term was apparently still in motion. My blood boiled at their assumption that I would be so easily controlled. Later that evening, Jessica called back. "Great news. I found your earrings. They had fallen behind the dresser somehow. I'll put them in your jewelry box for safekeeping." The footage told a different story. Mike had pulled the earrings from his suitcase and given them to Jessica to find. They were attempting to cover their tracks while still proceeding with their larger scheme. When I wasn't securing my finances or documenting their theft, I found myself wrestling with painful memories. Jessica and I building sandcastles at the beach as children. Me helping her with college applications. Her holding my hand at our grandfather's funeral. How had we gone from that close bond to this calculated betrayal? I remembered the summer Jessica broke her arm falling from a tree I had dared her to climb. I had been consumed with guilt, spending weeks doing her chores and reading her favorite stories to make up for it. I had always felt responsible for her, always been the one to bail her out of trouble. Had that dynamic created this situation? Had my protection enabled her to avoid consequences for too long? The final straw came when Rachel called with disturbing news. "Amanda, I don't know how to tell you this, but Jessica has been telling people you're having mental health issues. She told our mutual friend Kelly that you've been paranoid lately, imagining things, and that's why you installed cameras everywhere. She's suggesting your work stress has triggered some kind of breakdown." The calculated nature of this lie stunned me. Jessica was preemptively discrediting me in case I discovered her theft. If I accused her, she had already planted seeds of doubt about my mental stability. It was methodical and cruelly effective, exactly what someone would do if they planned to gaslight their victim. That night, I made my decision. I wouldn't be returning home after the conference as planned. I would arrive one day early, without warning, and confront them with irrefutable evidence. No more calls, no more pretending, no more being manipulated. It was time for Jessica and Mike to face consequences. I booked an earlier return flight, told no one of my changed plans, and prepared for the confrontation that would forever change my family. The Uber pulled up to my house at 2:37 p.m. on Thursday, a full day before Jessica and Mike expected me home. From the outside, everything looked normal: my neatly maintained lawn, the hanging plant on the porch still alive despite Jessica's neglect, mail neatly collected from the box. But I knew the inside would tell a different story. I inserted my key into the front door quietly, listening for movement inside. The house was silent except for the faint sound of the television coming from the living room. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The entryway was cluttered with shoes I didn't recognize, at least 3 different pairs of men's boots that didn't belong to Mike. The living room was worse. Empty beer bottles littered the coffee table, along with pizza boxes and cigarette butts in a makeshift ashtray, despite my strict no-smoking rule. The throw pillows were stained, and someone had clearly spilled red wine on my cream-colored rug without bothering to clean it properly. But it was the wall next to my dining room that made my stomach drop. The framed family photo, me, Jessica, and our parents at my graduation, was missing, leaving just a nail and a faded square where it had hung for the past year. I moved silently through the house, documenting the damage with my phone camera. The kitchen sink was piled with dirty dishes. Food containers had been left out, attracting fruit flies. My organized pantry had been ransacked, expensive ingredients used or discarded. When I reached my home office, I had to stifle a gasp. The room had been completely ransacked. My filing cabinet drawers stood open, folders emptied onto the floor. The lock on my desk had been forced open, splintering the wood. My computer was still there, but the external hard drive containing my backups was missing. The safe in the corner stood open and empty, the family jewelry, emergency cash, and important documents all gone. The master bedroom was even more violating. Jessica and Mike had indeed moved into my room, their clothes draped over my furniture, their toiletries spread across my bathroom counter. My closet had been partially emptied to make room for their belongings, my own clothes crumpled in a corner. The Egyptian cotton sheets I'd splurged on were stained and rumpled, and an unfamiliar cologne scent hung in the air. As I stood there surveying the destruction of my private space, I heard the front door open and close, followed by Jessica's laugh and the rustle of shopping bags. "I can't believe she has no idea," Mike was saying as they entered the house. "This has been the easiest money we've ever made." Jessica's response was cut short when she turned the corner and saw me standing in the hallway. The shopping bags she was carrying, designer brands I couldn't normally afford, dropped to the floor with a thud. "Amanda," she gasped, her face draining of color. You're home early." Mike recovered more quickly, pasting on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey. Surprise. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." I remained silent, my gaze moving from their shocked faces to the shopping bags to the state of my home around us. The moment stretched uncomfortably. "We were just about to clean up," Jessica said hurriedly, glancing around at the mess. "We had a few friends over last night and things got a little out of hand." "I'm so sorry about that." Still, I said nothing. "Is everything okay?" Mike asked, his tone concerned but his eyes calculating. "You seem upset. Was the conference not good?" Finally, I spoke, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. "Where are grandmother's sapphire earrings, Jessica?" Her hand unconsciously went to her ear, where I now noticed one of those very earrings was currently being worn. Her face flushed as she quickly removed it. "Oh. I was just borrowing these for a dinner we went to. I was going to put them back, I swear." "And my emergency cash? The one in the envelope in my nightstand? Were you borrowing that too?" Mike stepped forward, his demeanor shifting to defensive aggression. "Look, Amanda, I don't know what you're implying here, but we've been taking excellent care of your house. If anything's missing, maybe you should check your own memory. Jessica mentioned you've been under a lot of stress lately." There it was, the gaslighting Rachel had warned me about. "I know exactly what's missing," I said, pulling out my phone. "I have an itemized list. Over $15,000 worth of possessions that you've stolen during your stay here." Jessica's eyes filled with tears, always her go-to defense. "Amanda, you're my sister. How could you accuse me of stealing from you? After everything we've been through together? Remember when you got food poisoning in Mexico and I stayed with you in that horrible hotel bathroom all night? Remember when I helped you move into your first apartment? The emotional manipulation might have worked before, but not now. Not after what I'd seen." "Stop it, Jessica. I know everything. The copying of my keys, the strangers you brought into my home, the plans to forge my signature, Mike's gambling debts, the lies about your apartment. All of it." Their expressions changed in an instant, shock replaced by calculation. "You can't prove any of that," Mike said coldly. "It would be your word against ours. And frankly, with your history of anxiety and work stress, who do you think people will believe?" I smiled then, the kind of smile that holds no warmth. "That's where you're wrong." I walked to the living room television and plugged in my phone. Let me show you something interesting. The security footage appeared on screen, crystal clear, with perfect audio. I played a compilation of their worst moments, discussing how to access my accounts, cataloging my valuables, returning the found earrings they had actually stolen, bringing strangers into my home, discussing Mike's gambling debts and their plan to move in permanently. 10 minutes of undeniable evidence that they couldn't explain away. Jessica collapsed onto the couch, her fake tears replaced by genuine shock. Mike's aggressive facade cracked, revealing panic underneath. You were recording us? That's illegal. Mike blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, it's perfectly legal to have security cameras in my own home, I replied, channeling Brian's legal advice. Especially when they're clearly visible, as these were. Jessica looked up, her expression suddenly shifting to something I'd never seen before, a cold calculation that made me wonder if I'd ever really known my sister at all. Fine. You caught us taking a few things. But you've always been the successful one, the favorite daughter. You can afford to help family. Mike has some gambling debts, yes, but we were desperate. We were going to pay you back eventually. A few things? I repeated incredulously. You systematically looted my home, violated my privacy, planned to commit identity theft and forgery, and tried to discredit me by telling people I was mentally unstable. And now you're trying to justify it? Mike's demeanor changed again, this time to threatening. Delete that footage now, he demanded, stepping toward me. If you show that to anyone, you'll regret it. Think about what this would do to your parents, to our family reputation. Step back, Mike, I said firmly. I've already backed up this footage in multiple locations. And I've spoken to the police about filing charges. Jessica began to sob real tears this time. Please, Amanda, don't do this. We'll return everything. Mike made me do it. He said we would lose our apartment if we couldn't pay his debts. I never wanted to hurt you. Mike whirled on her. Shut up, Jessica. Don't you dare blame this on me. The jewelry was your idea. You're the one who found her password book. They turned on each other instantly, each trying to minimize their own culpability by maximizing the other's. It was both pathetic and revealing, their united front dissolving at the first sign of real consequences. I want you both out of my house right now, I said, cutting through their argument. Leave your copies of my keys and get out. You can't just throw us out, Mike argued. We've been living here. We have tenant rights. Actually, you don't, I countered. You were invited guests, not tenants. There's no lease, no rent payment, no legal tenancy established. And given the evidence of theft and fraud, I have grounds for immediate removal. Where are we supposed to go? Jessica wailed. That's not my problem anymore, I replied, surprising myself with my own hardness. You've made your choices. Now you deal with the consequences. The argument escalated, with Mike becoming increasingly agitated. When I held up my phone to show I was one button away from calling the police, he lunged forward, trying to grab it. I stepped back, but he kept coming, his face contorted with rage. Give me that phone, he shouted, grabbing my wrist hard enough to leave a mark. The front door opened at that exact moment, and my neighbor Mr. Keller appeared, holding a hedge trimmer. Everything okay in here, Amanda? We heard shouting, he said, his eyes narrowing at the scene before him, Mike gripping my arm, Jessica crying on the couch, the disarray of the house visible behind us. Mike immediately released me, his demeanor switching to calm so quickly it was disturbing. Just a family disagreement, he said smoothly. Nothing to worry about. But Mr. Keller wasn't fooled. Amanda? You want me to call someone? No need, I said firmly. Mike and Jessica were just leaving. For good. With a witness present, their options were limited. Jessica began hastily gathering her things while Mike stood seething. I watched them pack, ensuring they didn't take anything else that belonged to me. As they stuffed clothes into their suitcases, I noticed Jessica slip a small silver frame into her bag, another family photo she had no right to take. "Put it back," I said coldly. She hesitated, then returned the frame to the shelf with a defiant glare. 20 minutes later, they were loading their luggage into their car under the watchful eyes of both Mr. Keller and his wife, who had joined him on the lawn. As Jessica got into the passenger seat, she paused and looked back at me. "This isn't over, Amanda," she said quietly. "Families are supposed to help each other. You'll regret this." Then they drove away, leaving me standing in the doorway of my violated home, feeling simultaneously victorious and utterly heartbroken. The confrontation was over, but I knew the war had just begun. The first 24 hours after Jessica and Mike's departure were deceptively quiet. I spent them changing locks, documenting missing items for insurance claims, and trying to restore order to my ransacked home. Mr. and Mrs. Keller brought dinner and helped me clean up the worst of the mess, their kindness a stark contrast to my family's betrayal. "We knew something wasn't right," Mrs. Keller confided. "Too many strangers coming and going. Your sister told us you were selling the house. We found that odd since you'd just moved in and seemed so happy here." So Jessica and Mike had been laying groundwork with my neighbors too, preparing for whatever scheme they'd planned. The depth of their deception continued to unfold with each new discovery. The calm broke on day 2 with a barrage of text messages from my mother. "How could you throw your sister out on the street? Jessica is devastated. Call me immediately." When I did call, my parents had already been thoroughly poisoned against me. Jessica had presented herself as the victim of my paranoid delusions and selfish materialism. According to her version, she had accidentally used a few of my things, and I had overreacted catastrophically due to work stress. "She said you accused her of stealing jewelry she was just borrowing," my mother said, her voice tight with disappointment. "And that you installed spy cameras to watch them like criminals." "Did she mention the $15,000 worth of items missing from my home?" I asked calmly. "Were the copies they made of my house keys? Or Mike's gambling debts they were trying to pay off with my possessions?" "Jessica said you'd say that," my father interjected. "She warned us you've been making things up, seeing conspiracies everywhere. She's worried about your mental health, Amanda." The preemptive gaslighting had worked perfectly. My parents, who had always seen Jessica as the fragile one needing protection, were fully prepared to believe I had suffered some kind of breakdown rather than accept that their younger daughter was a thief. "I have video evidence," I told them. "Security footage of everything." "Spying on family is disturbing behavior," my mother replied. "Maybe you should see someone, talk to a professional." The conversation ended with me agreeing to send them selected clips of the security footage, though I doubted it would change their minds immediately. Jessica had spent years perfecting her role as the vulnerable sister, while I was cast as the strong one who occasionally needed to be taken down a peg. The family drama was just beginning. By the end of the week, I had received concerned calls from 3 extended family members who had heard I was having difficulties. Jessica had been busy spreading her version of events, positioning herself as the concerned sister dealing with my irrational behavior. Meanwhile, I was taking practical steps to protect myself. I filed a comprehensive police report, providing copies of the security footage showing clear evidence of theft. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic but realistic. "Family theft cases are complicated," he explained. "Prosecutors don't always pursue them aggressively because juries tend to see family disputes as civil matters. But with this video evidence, we definitely have grounds to proceed." I filed for a temporary restraining order after Mike sent a series of threatening late-night texts. "You think you've won? We know where you live, where you work, who your friends are. Families have ways of solving problems that cops and courts don't understand. You'll regret choosing your stuff over your sister. Blood is supposed to be thicker than water." The texts were vague enough to maintain plausible deniability but specific enough to make me feel unsafe in my own home. The restraining order was granted based on the threatening messages and the video of Mike grabbing my arm during our confrontation. I took a week off work to deal with the fallout and restore my home to order. When I returned to the office, I discovered the situation had followed me there. My assistant greeted me with an uncomfortable expression. "Someone called for you yesterday," she said hesitantly. "A man who said he was your brother-in-law. When I told him you were out of the office, he got angry and said some concerning things about your mental state. Then he asked for information about your client list." Mike had tried to access my professional contacts. I immediately reported this to my firm's security team and management, explaining the situation candidly. My boss was supportive but concerned. "We need to make sure this doesn't affect client relationships," he said. "If your brother-in-law is contacting clients directly, it could create serious problems." My fear was justified the very next day when a longtime client called, confused about an email he had received. "I got a strange message from someone claiming to be your sister," he explained. "She said you've been having personal problems that might affect your work performance and suggested I might want to temporarily move my account to another advisor. Is everything okay, Amanda?" Jessica and Mike had escalated to attempting to damage my professional reputation and client relationships. They had moved from stealing physical items to trying to steal my livelihood. The digital attacks continued. Fake social media profiles appeared using my name and photo, posting erratic content that made me look unstable. Reviews for my firm began appearing online, specifically naming me as incompetent and emotionally volatile. Anonymous emails were sent to my professional network with outlandish claims about my personal life. I had to hire a digital reputation management company to address the online sabotage, adding to the already significant financial cost of the thefts. My credit monitoring service flagged multiple attempts to open credit cards in my name. Jessica had apparently photographed enough of my personal information to attempt identity theft. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my security system alerted me to activity at my front door at 2:14 a.m. The footage showed Mike attempting to use a key, presumably the copy they had made, to enter my home. When the new locks prevented his entry, he tried the windows before eventually leaving. Without the security system and changed locks, he would have entered my home while I was sleeping. I provided the new footage to the police and my restraining order was extended and strengthened. Officers drove by my house more frequently, and Mr. Keller, a retired military veteran, kept a watchful eye on unusual vehicles or people in the neighborhood. The emotional toll was immense. I had lost not just valuable possessions but my sense of security and my relationship with my only sibling. My parents remained caught in the middle, wanting to believe the best of both daughters but increasingly confronted with evidence of Jessica's deception. Family gatherings were now impossible, holiday plans uncertain. Through it all, I discovered unexpected strength in myself and unexpected support from friends and colleagues. Rachel stayed with me for several nights when I felt unsafe alone. My boss authorized additional security measures for our office building. Clients who knew me well saw through the defamation attempts and expressed their continued confidence. The most unexpected support came in the form of an email from Eliza, Mike's ex-wife from a brief marriage in his early 20s. "I saw a post about you online that seemed suspicious, did some digging, and realized you're dealing with Mike's true nature now," she wrote. "He did similar things to me: theft, gaslighting, identity fraud. I have documentation that might help your case if you're pursuing legal action. You're not crazy, and you're not alone." Eliza's evidence revealed a pattern of behavior going back years. Mike had a history of targeting women with resources, using charm and manipulation to gain access to their assets, then employing psychological tactics to avoid consequences when discovered. Jessica had either been his victim first or had become his willing accomplice. Either way, they were now operating as a team. Armed with this new information and the mounting evidence from my own experience, I was ready to push for serious legal consequences. This wasn't just about recovering my stolen property anymore. It was about protecting myself and potentially others from two people who had shown they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. The next stage would be the hardest, facing Jessica and Mike in court, exposing the full truth to my family, and seeking not just restitution but justice. As painful as the process would be, I was no longer the trusting sister who could be manipulated. I was prepared to fight for what was right, even if it permanently changed my family forever. 3 months after I first discovered Jessica and Mike's betrayal, I stood outside the county courthouse, clutching a folder containing printed security footage stills, financial documentation, and victim impact statements. My lawyer, Brian, stood beside me projecting reassuring confidence, while Rachel waited on a bench nearby for moral support. "You've got this," Brian said. "The evidence is overwhelming." The legal process had moved surprisingly quickly once the police investigation connected Jessica and Mike to a series of other thefts. My case had expanded beyond family fraud into a criminal pattern that the district attorney's office was eager to prosecute. Apparently, I wasn't their only victim, just the most thoroughly documented one. The police had executed a search warrant on their new apartment 2 weeks earlier, recovering several of my stolen items along with possessions belonging to 3 other victims: Mike's cousin, Jessica's former roommate, and a family they had house-sat for last year. The systematic nature of their operation had elevated the charges from simple theft to organized fraud. My insurance company had been surprisingly supportive throughout the process. My comprehensive documentation and video evidence made their investigation straightforward, and they had already approved claims for most of the stolen items. The claims adjuster had even requested permission to use my case as a training example for their team on thorough victim documentation. Inside the courtroom, I saw my parents sitting in the back row, their faces drawn with the strain of divided loyalties. They had finally viewed the complete security footage a month ago, and the undeniable evidence had forced them to accept the truth about Jessica. My mother had wept for hours afterward, mourning both the daughter she thought she knew and the fractured family that resulted. My father had retreated into stoic silence, his disappointment too profound for words. When Jessica and Mike were let in, I felt a strange disconnect. Jessica looked smaller somehow, her confident posture replaced with hunched shoulders and nervous glances. Mike maintained his arrogant demeanor, but his eyes betrayed anxiety as they darted around the courtroom, likely calculating his diminishing options. The proceedings were both faster and more anticlimactic than television had led me to expect. With the mountain of evidence against them and the additional victims coming forward, their attorney had negotiated a plea deal. They would plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for mandatory restitution, probation, and community service. The judge addressed them sternly as she reviewed the terms. The court orders restitution in the amount of $23,750 to Amanda Wilson, plus additional amounts to other victims as itemized in the agreement. You will both serve 3 years of supervised probation, complete 200 hours of community service, and undergo mandatory financial counseling and gambling addiction treatment. She turned her attention directly to Jessica. The court takes particular note of the betrayal of family trust in this case. Ms. Wilson, exploiting your sister's generosity to commit these crimes shows a troubling lack of moral character that this court finds especially reprehensible. Jessica began to cry silently, nodding in acknowledgement of the judge's words. For the first time since this ordeal began, her tears seemed genuine rather than manipulative. When the judge asked if I wished to make a victim impact statement, I stood and addressed the court. What my sister and her husband took from me can't be fully measured in dollars. They stole my sense of security, my family relationships, and my ability to trust. The financial loss is substantial, but the emotional damage is incalculable. I installed security cameras to protect my home from strangers, never imagining I would need protection from my own family. I hope the court's decision today helps them understand the gravity of their actions and make better choices in the future. I sat down, my hands shaking but my voice having remained steady. Jessica tried to catch my eye, but I looked away. This wasn't the time for reconciliation that would require genuine remorse and significant changes on her part, neither of which I was convinced had occurred. As part of the settlement, the court granted a permanent restraining order prohibiting Jessica and Mike from contacting me, coming to my home or workplace, or communicating with my clients. This legal boundary provided the security I needed to begin rebuilding my life without fear of their interference. Outside the courthouse, my parents approached hesitantly. "We're so sorry, Amanda," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We should have believed you from the beginning." My father, never comfortable with emotional displays, simply put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "You did the right thing. It couldn't have been easy." Their acknowledgement meant more than I expected. The path to healing our family relationships would be long, but this was a start. Over the following year, my life gradually returned to a new normal. The insurance claim allowed me to replace most of the stolen items, though family heirlooms like my grandmother's jewelry were irreplaceable. I had the locks changed again and upgraded to an even more comprehensive security system. My work reputation recovered as the fake reviews were removed and my clients remained loyal. The experience changed me in fundamental ways. I became more cautious with trust, more vigilant about protecting my assets, and paradoxically, more appreciative of the genuine relationships in my life. Rachel's unwavering support, the Kellers' neighborly concern, my colleagues' understanding. These authentic connections stood in stark contrast to Jessica's betrayal. I channeled my experience into something positive by starting a side business offering security consulting for individuals concerned about theft or fraud. My first-hand experience made me particularly effective at identifying vulnerabilities in home security and personal financial protection. What had begun as a traumatic violation became valuable expertise I could share with others. 16 months after the court hearing, I received a letter, not from Jessica directly, which would have violated the restraining order, but forwarded through my parents. In it, Jessica explained she and Mike had divorced after he violated his probation and returned to gambling. She had completed therapy, was working a steady job, and was trying to make amends where possible. "I know I can never fully repair what I broke between us," she wrote. "My actions were inexcusable, regardless of Mike's influence or my own weaknesses. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused and am working every day to become someone better." The letter included no requests or expectations, just acknowledgement and regret. I put it away without responding immediately, unsure if reconciliation was possible or even desirable. Time would tell if her changes were genuine, and I had learned the value of patience and verification. The security cameras that had uncovered Jessica's betrayal remained in place, but they represented something different now. Rather than symbols of paranoia or distrust, they were reminders of my resilience and the importance of seeing clearly. Sometimes love can blind us to hard truths, sometimes we need technological eyes to reveal what human eyes miss. Today, my home is peaceful again. The violated feeling has faded, replaced by confidence in my own strength and judgment. I still struggle with family gatherings, which remain complicated and sometimes tense, but I've found a new balance between caution and connection. I've learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about respect, trust, and mutual support. Looking back, installing those security cameras was one of the best decisions I ever made, though not for the reasons I expected. They didn't just protect me from outside threats, they revealed the truth about those closest to me, forcing me to confront difficult realities and ultimately become stronger for it. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted completely wasn't who they seemed? Did you follow your instincts or ignore the red flags? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Your support helps me continue sharing these real-life lessons. And remember, sometimes the most important security measure isn't the lock on your door but your willingness to see the truth, even when it hurts. Thank you for listening to my story. May you never need security cameras to uncover betrayal in your own life, but if you do, I hope you find the courage to face whatever they reveal.